And Kelsey Plum blows the lid off the joint, letting us all in on a small secret. Team Clark, they had no idea what was awaiting them walking into that locker room.
The timing of the incident only amplified its impact. The 2025 WNBA All-Star Game in Indianapolis was supposed to double as Caitlin Clark's long-awaited homecoming on one of the league's biggest stages. Playing in front of her home state crowd during a nationally televised showcase, it was poised to be a defining moment, both personally and symbolically. Instead, Clark was forced to watch from the sidelines. A groin injury kept her out of action, turning what should have been a celebration into a quiet absence. But injuries are part of the game. Fans understood that. The real damage came afterward, when the spotlight shifted from Clark's unfortunate absence to an unnecessary verbal attack in her name. Following the game, rather than redirecting focus toward league-wide goals or emphasizing player solidarity, Kelsey Plum took an unsolicited shot at Team Clark. There was no provocation, no question that demanded a response, no pressing controversy that required clarification. Plum chose the moment. That choice matters. Public criticism during All-Star Weekend doesn't exist in a vacuum. Every word is amplified, every clip travels, and every remark shapes how fans perceive the league's internal dynamics. By singling out Clark, especially when she wasn't present to respond, Plum created a narrative that overshadowed the very event designed to uplift the sport. The optics were particularly damaging given Clark's circumstances. She wasn't competing. She wasn't dominating headlines with performance. She was injured, sidelined, and already missing a milestone moment. To then become the target of criticism felt gratuitous. Instead of protecting a moment of collective focus, Plum injected unnecessary division into a weekend that desperately needed cohesion. The result wasn't debate or discussion. It was confusion and frustration among fans who expected better from veteran leadership.
We didn't, at least as players, we didn't know that was going to happen. So I think it was kind of like a genuine surprise. But the T-shirt, just united front, was determined this morning. That we had a meeting for, and not to tattletale, but 0 members of team.
Sabrina Ionescu was visibly unimpressed by what unfolded next, and for good reason. Kelsey Plum's decision to publicly criticize Caitlin Clark without prompting, without context, and while seated beside one of Clark's most vocal supporters, turned what should have been a moment of unity at the WNBA All-Star Game into one of the most uncomfortable press conference moments the league has seen in years. The All-Star Weekend is traditionally a pause from tension. It's meant to be celebratory. Players come together to highlight the league's growth, promote collective goals, and present a unified front to fans, sponsors, and the media. This year, that unity mattered more than ever, given ongoing collective bargaining negotiations and heightened public scrutiny. Instead of reinforcing the shared purpose, Plum's comments derailed it entirely. What made the moment especially jarring was the setting. This wasn't a heated post-game interview or a competitive exchange on the court. It was a controlled media environment, following a carefully planned demonstration meant to emphasize solidarity among players. The contrast between the message the league wanted to project and the one that actually landed could not have been sharper. Plum's criticism of Clark wasn't just unnecessary, it was strategically reckless. Clark, even while sidelined, remains the most visible figure in women's basketball. She represents a bridge between longtime fans and the millions of new viewers who have recently embraced the WNBA. Any public shot at her, especially during an event designed to promote unity, was bound to draw attention for all the wrong reasons. That's why the reaction in the room mattered. This wasn't outrage. It wasn't applause. It was discomfort, the kind that signals everyone present understands something has gone wrong. The boldness of Plum's decision to speak out in that moment wasn't courageous. It was miscalculated. And Sabrina Ionescu, seated nearby, immediately recognized it.
Was at the All-Star Game in Indianapolis. She made quite a scene, bruh. This time, at the conclusion of the game, I was one of the first people to break the story about her actually making comments about Caitlin Clark's team not being at this meeting for the CBA negotiations. Now, we know the WNBA All-Stars came out with these T-shirts.
This incident also undercut the broader message the players were trying to send. The Pay Us What You Owe Us shirts were meant to be a clear, unified statement about collective bargaining negotiations. The demonstration was carefully planned to convey solidarity, fairness, and shared purpose. It was about players standing together. Kelsey Plum's remarks fractured that image. Rather than reinforcing unity, her comments shifted attention to internal conflict, specifically how some veteran players engage with the league's most high-profile newcomer. Instead of highlighting systemic issues like revenue sharing and salary structure, the conversation devolved into personal dynamics and perceived resentment. That's a problem. Collective bargaining depends on public goodwill. Fans don't need to understand every financial detail, but they need to believe players are acting in good faith and with shared interests. When a veteran publicly undermines the league's biggest draw during a moment of supposed unity, it creates doubt about that cohesion. It also exposes a deeper tension, how some established players respond to generational change. Clark represents more than just talent. She represents a shift in attention, economics, and visibility. Navigating that transition requires maturity and strategic restraint, not impulsive commentary. Instead of advancing the player's cause, Plum's remarks handed critics an easy distraction. The focus moved away from labor rights and onto internal discord. That's not just a missed opportunity, it's a self-inflicted wound.
Women's National Basketball Players Association president, Breanna Stewart, vice president, and Nafisa Collier, all on opposing teams from Team Clark. How does it work out that the three biggest players in the Players Association had an idea about wearing a Pay Us What You Owe Us t-shirt, make this decision last minute that this is what the players will do?
The press conference itself captured the fallout in real time. As Plum initially spoke about the decision to wear the Unity shirts, the room followed along. This was familiar ground. Then she pivoted. Without warning, she introduced a comment that had nothing to do with the agreed-upon message. None of Team Clark's representatives were present. No one was prepared for the shift, and the atmosphere changed instantly. Silence followed, not the polite pause of a thoughtful room, but the kind of silence that signals collective discomfort. Reporters stopped typing. Smiles faded. The moment stretched on longer than it should have. Viewers watching from home could feel it. The tension didn't need explanation. It was obvious that Plum had crossed an unspoken line. This wasn't bold honesty. It was a deviation that left everyone scrambling to process what had just happened. Press conferences are rarely memorable. This one was for all the wrong reasons.
A genuine surprise, but the t-shirt, just united front was determined this morning, that we had a meeting for. And, not to tattletale, but 0 members of Team Clark were very present for that. But no, we were just, we had a very, that really needed to be mentioned.
What should have been a moment of unity at the WNBA All-Star Weekend instead became one of the most uncomfortable and revealing press conference moments the league has seen in years. The tension crystallized the instant Kelsey Plum chose to publicly criticize Caitlin Clark, unprompted, unnecessary, and completely out of step with the message players were trying to project. This All-Star Weekend carried more weight than usual. With collective bargaining negotiations stalled and a potential lockout looming, the league needed solidarity. Players wore Pay Us What You Owe Us shirts to signal unity, shared purpose, and a collective fight for fair compensation. The goal was clear: present a united front to fans, media, and ownership. That message unraveled in seconds. Caitlin Clark, sidelined with a groin injury, was already missing what should have been a defining moment: her All-Star showcase in Indianapolis, in front of a home crowd eager to celebrate the face of the league's recent explosion in popularity. She wasn't on the court. She wasn't dominating headlines with performance. She was simply absent. And yet, she became the focal point of a controversy she didn't create. Plum's comments redirected attention away from labor issues and toward internal division, particularly how some veteran players relate to the league's most impactful newcomer. The optics were disastrous. Clark represents the surge in attendance, ratings, merchandise sales, and mainstream attention the WNBA has never experienced before. She is the reason arenas sold out, why national debate shows dedicated entire segments to women's basketball, and why new fans flooded into the sport. Publicly dismissing or minimizing her role, especially during a moment designed to emphasize unity, wasn't bold honesty. It was strategic failure. The reaction in the room said everything. Silence followed. Not thoughtful silence, but discomfort. Reporters froze. The energy shifted. Viewers at home could feel the tension without a single word being spoken. This wasn't a debate anyone wanted, and it wasn't the narrative the league could afford. Sitting just feet away was Sabrina Ionescu, representing Team Clark. Her reaction was immediate and unfiltered. An eye roll, a look of disbelief. It was clear she understood what many fans instantly recognized. This moment didn't help the players, the league, or the negotiations. When Ionescu responded, she did so with restraint but firmness, restoring some balance to a moment that had spiraled unnecessarily. The broader issue isn't personal dislike or rivalry. It's messaging. In a league that finally has momentum, visibility, and leverage, internal fractures are magnified. Collective bargaining relies not just on numbers, but on public support. When veteran players publicly undermine the league's biggest draw, they weaken their own position. This wasn't just an awkward press conference. It was a warning. The WNBA is at a crossroads, and how its players handle generational change, public perception, and internal unity may determine whether this moment becomes a breakthrough or a missed opportunity.